My initial reaction to the podcast on bilingual counseling is kind of a, wow, I haven't really even thought that much about it kind of response. And I know that sounds bad, but I feel like I focused a lot on, what it means to be a multicultural counselor and being aware of the client's culture and values, but I don't think that I've honestly deeply thought much about what it'll be like to have a client who may not understand me and vice versa. Um, I think that's the part that stood out the most to me in the podcast is when Dr. Repasarda talked about using translators in counseling sessions with clients who don't speak your language. And I just think that would be really difficult and really awkward. And I think, as she pointed out, my biggest concern would be whether they've clearly conveyed the message that you wanted them to convey or tell to your client, and making sure they haven't added anything or taken anything away from what you said. And I think that goes into what she said about the translator remaining neutral and not trying to put any bias in there and kind of ad-lib a little bit. And of course, she said you would want to make sure your translator understood confidentiality and what the counseling process is supposed to be about. And I think that's just a lot to kind of worry about, but it's absolutely necessary, to have a translator if you do have a client who speaks another language. And I think that's where our responsibilities are. We have a responsibility, of course, to make our client feel as welcome as we can, even though we don't understand each other's language. And we can do that, through expressions and body language and, doing a little research, maybe on their language to at least learn how to say, like Dr. Rapsard says, say hello and say I'm sorry. Those are just things that might be just what your client needs to hear, from you, even if you can't say much else. And I think, it's pretty far-fetched to say that a counselor would be able to speak any language, that may come into their office, But I think it would be a great idea for counselors to kind of survey the area and figure out what other language would best serve the area. For example, this area has a lot of Hispanics, and being able to speak fluent Spanish would be great, but being able to just speak a little bit so that you can kind of have a little better understanding of what's going on within the session, aside from what the translator tells you, I think would be an asset, to a counselor. And I think, that is the benefit of being able to speak the client's language, is that you could just develop that relationship with them and speak directly to them. And I just think the translation process is just that. It's a process. It's somewhat robotic, and it's kind of a wait, respond type deal. And I just think that just kind of, I don't know if it necessarily lessens the effectiveness, which I think it could, but it just kind of, I think, hinders the relationship that the counselor and client could develop if the counselor were able to speak directly to their client. And anyway, those are just a few of my thoughts on bilingual counseling, and I look forward to viewing your videos as well. Thanks.